me your ears.
This nation will rise up.
Welcome to the Elemental Health Podcast. Welcome back to the Elemental Health Podcast, another installment. I hope you're as thrilled as I am about bringing you the guest this week. We have none other than Mr. Lawrence Price. If you haven't heard of Lawrence, he is a massive influencer in men's health and fitness in the UK. And I got the pleasure of meeting him when we did some ambassador work together. This guy has gone on from that a couple of years ago to much dizzier heights. Very recently been featured on the front cover of Men's Health, which I know was a aspirational dream for him. So it's a real dream come true and something that is truly impressive in the fitness space. That is very competitive. He's doing lots of interesting stuff with brands and in the personal training space and in the fitness space in general. But I think the most important thing that comes out of this conversation from my perspective is how he juggles his very busy professional life with being a father of two and staying in shape whilst being very busy, moving around, traveling around a lot, and also having a very busy home life, which I know we can all relate to. So it's really pertinent to that aspect of kind of your lives, and I think there's loads and loads of relatable aspects that are drawn out. I'm also blown away by Lawrence's humility and his humbling nature, for someone that's really succeeded in the health and fitness space, and he's truly a great guy, and that is so evident and clear in the way he expresses himself, and he's very much a kind of mindful warrior in the fitness space, and very careful about how he puts his message out into the world, which I truly admire, and I am thrilled to bring you this episode. Without further ado, Mr. Lawrence Price. Awesome. Lawrence Price, welcome to the Elemental Health Podcast. How are you doing?
Dude, thank you so much for having me. This is so technical. I love it. You look amazing on screen. You've got I thought you had a face for radio, but it works on a computer screen as well. You look good, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Well, welcome to the podcast. I've been excited about getting you on for a while. Obviously, we've been trying to sort it out, and I'm really keen to have a chat with you and have a conversation with you and kind of bring my audience your insight into how you live your life and the different components that you value, and also how you plan your exercise routines with your busy schedule and those sort of bits and pieces as well, and your kind of take on coaching. Loads to talk about, but I just wanted to start off. I mean, Lawrence Price, we're seeing you in Men's Health, we're seeing you in the Daily Mail, we're seing you pop up everywhere in the media, aren't we, at the moment?
I'm sorry about all that. Yeah, it's really random. It's really random, and honestly, I kind of feel like a lot of that's kind of been a little bit accidental, because those are almost bigger picture goals. I think I speak to a lot of people, and they sort of say that one of their goals is to work towards being on the cover of a fitness magazine. That's why they're training, whatever it might be, or to get into publications or newspapers and so on. But I'd be 100% honest with you. I never ever in a million years thought that I would even be in that category for someone who would be, A, asked to go topless, and then B, to put it on the front of a magazine. It was really sort of random, but the only thing I could put my finger on for why it happened is just because, a number of years ago, maybe 6 years ago or something like that, I sort of really started honing in on living this kind of wholesome life where I would just focus on my day-to-day kind of experiences and trying to get the most out of life in the short term and the small details, and not look too far ahead, and just try and live well. And then it's really weird, like the years have gone on and really good stuff has started to happen like that. And I'm a big believer of now of just kind of living your life day to day, not looking too far ahead, but just living with an open heart and living with intent to do your job well, to look after, to serve your family well, to serve yourself well. And then the universe kind of fills in the details for you. It's really weird how that seems to have happened with me. And sounds like a bit of a cop-out, because people sometimes say, well, what's your 5-year plan? I haven't even got a 1-year plan, let alone a 5-year plan. I'm just quite happy at the moment. kind of, as I say, living every day with purpose, but not looking too far beyond that, to be honest. So it's all very random, Nick. Very random.
Well, that's an incredibly profound opening statement, and I think you've kind of we could wrap this up now, and you've kind of given a lot.
Job done. There it is. Lovely talking to you.
You've given a lot of value to the guys listening in, and me as well, because I think, it's incredibly important to focus on what you're doing day to day and how you're approaching everything in your life, and that every hour of your day should be meaningful, because we know that accumulates up over time, and that is what your life is. I think I'm always referencing it, and the people that maybe follow me closely might get bored of me hearing it, but it pulls at the same thread that you're pulling out there, which is, we've got a life that's spent in process. 90% of our life is spent in process, yet we spend so much of our time focusing on the big goal that may or may not come in the future, further down the road, whatever that might be, the lottery ticket or whatever things we're daydreaming about. But we're spending 90% of our life in process. So if you're not focusing on that process, or enjoying that process day to day, and having a routine that makes sense to you, opening your heart to the world, and kind of and living purposefully, then you're focusing on the 10%, and that just the equation doesn't stack up.
I mean, I think that's definitely what I was guilty of before. I was guilty of that summit fever, where you're kind of thinking of the peak of each mountain, but of course every time you get to the peak of a mountain there's another peak, and that joy is usually pretty temporary. I think it's quite prevalent in sports people, apparently. Johnny Wilkins won the World Cup, and he said the next day was the most miserable day of his life, because what was the goal after that? He was so focused on that one big goal for so many years, and then all of a sudden it was gone. But extreme example, obviously I'm not going to be winning any World Cups any day soon, but in terms of my goal setting in the past, it was probably more style based over substance. So I was kind of thinking about, what the big shiny objects, and trying to focus on, these kind of big longer term goals. And as soon as I let that go, and as soon as I just focused on the here and now, and as I say, living a more wholesome, fulfilling life day to day, it's funny how the frustration and the comparisons go out of the window, and you have a general deeper contentment day to day. And this sounds, I don't want to sound cheesy, but this is genuinely how what I believe now, and how I live. It's just what I genuinely believe to be true. It's incredible how life, just happens. That life does fill in the details. But summit fever is definitely something I've experienced in Type A personalities as well. From a coaching point of view, you'll get some clients who walk through the door and amazingly sort of focused individuals, which is great, and that's a blessing. And I think focus is such an important sort of skill to have in life, but the pitfalls can come with that ambition and focus when it's combined in a way that only focuses on the big goals as opposed to the process, as you say. So having, I think, the right combination of the two is a good place to be. Having a real sort of keen enthusiasm for the process, and enjoying the process, as you say, but also in the back of your mind knowing that some interesting things could happen off the back of that. It's not, I'm not saying completely curb your desire for progress, but I definitely think having your eyes down and looking at the first few steps in front of you is probably a more useful way to go, not just in terms of building the success you may be after, but also just for your general well-being as well. As they say, comparison is the thief of joy, and often our bigger goals come from comparing to what other people have and thinking, I want that, I want that, I want that. And it's not a joyful existence, that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's interesting because I think people will kind of see your presence and your kind of your media face and kind of the front cover and maybe have a predisposed opinion of who you are and how you live your life, and your answers definitely conflict directly with that. So what have you had any kind of feedback from kind of guys who aren't in your position, or any pushback on kind of, oh, it's all right for you but it's different for me type responses?
Yeah. I mean, I probably so, as you know, I'm a parent, I'm a dad, and I have to say that I get a huge amount of positive feedback, and people, I find 90% of the time, are so supportive and interested, and have that curiosity, which I think is a really lovely sort of attribute to have. But yeah, of course, along the way, I'd be disappointed if I never received any pushback or anything that made me question how I present my content or how I document my life, because I think every time I put stuff out there, obviously I'm aware that things like Instagram it's a visual platform, and therefore you need that kind of a visual hook at the start, but then you need to be able to, I think, really follow up with some depth and some insight, which is what I try to do most of the time. So I'm often, trying to step back and sort of look at my work, I suppose, if you like, and question if it's serving as many people as it can do, where I might be going wrong, and so on. So when people do give that pushback, I do find it quite useful, because I'm able to then maybe sit back and kind of reassess how I present stuff. But the only pushback I've been having, in a long-winded way to answer your question, is that obviously I'm a father now and a dad, and a lot of the training that I do at the moment, particularly with the recent Mail Online article and so on, it's all about kind of how to remain fit and healthy and active whilst being a parent when your time's kind of, cut short and all these other kind of pressures and strains come in. And this is very much the life I'm kind of leading. But I understand that I'm a fitness professional. I'm very blessed in that I'm an actual personal trainer. So my lifestyle can be curated in a certain way that it would be a lot harder for someone who works in the office 8 until 8 every day would be, and I'm completely aware of that. So the pushback I've had is that people have been wanting me to set realistic goals for the world outside of the fitness bubble as well. I think as fitness professionals, what I try to be aware of is that we are living in an echo chamber full of, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things, elite performing athletes, right? People who are able to run long distances, lift heavy weights, and they're able to train every day, and they're able to kind of get obsessive about it. And fitness for them is their number 1 or 2 priorities in life, as opposed to further down the pecking order at 3 and 4. So what I've tried to do recently is to try and appeal to more people outside of that fitness bubble, outside of that training elite, which is where I think the fitness industry very much should be going anyway. And I've tried to make my advice a bit more relevant and accessible for the non-fitness elite, if you see what I'm saying. But I think I've got a good balance for that. And although I'm very fortunate having had 12 years in the career of fitness, a lot of that time has been spent, in work at 6 a.m., finishing work or training at 9 or 10 p.m. And it's only just this year actually that I've moved back home. I actually spent 4 nights living away from the family every week so that I could sustain that career in London as well. So I'm definitely aware of what it's like to have to really grind out the working hours and at the detriment of your family time or your personal time or even personal health at times, which is why I've been so set on curating this lifestyle at the moment. Something like that, the lifestyle is something I really, really value, and particularly, as I say, having kind of put so many years in the trenches from a sort of PT point of view. But I've worked hard to curate this lifestyle now where I do have time to get up and go for a walk in the morning in the country before I have breakfast like I did today, as opposed to be out and off to work at 5 a.m. and so on, and to be able to pick up the kids from school at 4 or 5 p.m. as opposed to being in the gym teaching classes until 8 or 9 and so on. It's taken me a good 10 years to get to this point, so I'm really grateful to be here, but I do understand that I do know what it feels like not to have that freedom when it comes to curating your own lifestyle. So I'm definitely sympathetic to that side as well.
Yeah, I think
that was a very long-winded answer. I'm sorry, Nick.
No,
I'll try and be a bit more to the point. It's a lovely question as well, because this is one of the juxtapositions of the fitness industry, that we're coaches. We can dedicate our lives to living the fit life, but we're giving advice and trying to help people who have got a whole world outside of that going on, and very real day-to-day challenges of work and looking after family and so on. So I think we do need to be really aware of the advice we give out, for it to be as realistic and as actionable as possible to the regular person in the street.
I agree. I do agree. But I think one thing you touched on there is, people, it's easy for people to forget, and they kind of see the highlight reel on Instagram or wherever it might be, or cover of Men's Health or whatever. It's, there's a lot of work that goes into those there's hours put in there, and the life of a trainer coach in the fitness world is not very glamorous. Actually, it's getting up 4:35 a.m, being in work for 5:30, and usually it involves late evenings as well. So there is, I'm not suggesting it's tougher or worse than anyone else who's doing anything different, but I think there's an aspect of pushback from my perspective when people say, oh, yeah, but you work in fitness, so it's easy for you. I think we're all trying to live our passion. No one goes into this industry because just for a purely financial perspective, because most people aren't making that much money, and there's a lot of hours, a lot of work that goes in before you get very far.
Yeah, definitely, it's a lifestyle choice, isn't it? And I kind of, I feel, I sort of when I started out being a PT, it was in my early 20s, and I was playing rugby, sort of semi-pro at the time. So in my head, I thought my 20s, it would be a great active way to spend my 20s and earn a bit of money playing rugby for a small salary, and then doing some PT for a small salary. And if that gives me a little bit of freedom and a little bit of income to live the life I want during my 20s, great. And then when I turn 30, I'll get a real job and enter into a real career. Obviously that never happened, because it turns out that the fitness industry is now a genuinely viable career that you can kind of work in, because it's a booming industry. But I never saw that sort of coming. But I certainly come from a family and friends who've got more traditional jobs, and I was the one who went down a different route. But as I say, the view is always to come back and maybe do a proper job at some point.
Yeah, but I think we have seen a massive shift in our sort of generation. I'm a little bit older than you, I think, but
just a little bit. That's not how much. I'm catching you up, Nick.
But yeah, I think we have seen a cultural shift. When I was growing up playing rugby, also not the standard you were at, fitness wasn't really that viable, and you always kind of thought there's more of a corporate, more of a job mentality. I think now we're seeing a much more of a shift into freelance and fitness, explosion in health and fitness and wellness and all that comes with that, good and bad. So it is a really interesting space to be in, and I think that's a massive positive is that guys like yourself are able to carve out their own niche and their own unique kind of version of the career that they want, that is not self-serving, that is focused on actually giving to the communities that you care about and give a shit about, and actually trying to put a message out there that people can adhere to and will bring them benefit.
Yeah, it's funny. I always try and struggle not to sound too cheesy when I talk about this, but it is so true that it is the most satisfying job when you speak to, you see clients go on a bit of a journey. Sorry to use that term, but I haven't come up with a better way of describing it. But someone walks in the gym to see you who's perhaps never set foot in the gym before, and has perhaps, never really had any kind of thread of fitness in their life, and they present all these issues that they might have, both physical and emotional and practical as well when it comes to family or professional life. And you walk with them down this path, and it's a winding path, so it always is. Progress, as we know, never comes in that straight line. So you go through these highs and lows together, but you come out at the other side at this kind of destination in which they've come so far and achieved so many wonderful things. And I've had some very emotional conversations and messages of thanks from clients. And honestly, I don't know, there can't be many jobs out there that you get such a lovely personal touch. And it is a funny industry. It's called personal training because it is very personal. And yet it's your profession. So there's these funny blurred lines between deeply caring about your clients. I have clients who I deeply care about who came to my wedding. And yet, we're engaged in a professional sense, but it goes far deeper than that. It's a very special career to be in, and again, I feel very lucky to have found it. Just to kind of, I'll do a bit of personal training whilst playing rugby in my early 20s turned out to be a full-on career, which has been the best kind of non-decision I ever made. I just let it happen, and as I said earlier, the universe filled in the rest.
Cool. So pivoting slightly, you touched on it a tiny bit, but I want to expand and go deep on this topic of. So you come from an elite performance background, and you're also in an ecosystem where you come into contact with lots of fitness professionals that are just incredible, are in incredible shape. And super focused. What do you see as the big differentiators between those guys that are absolutely able to maintain that over the long term, that peak physical condition and the health that they want, versus guys who aren't there yet, who are struggling, who are facing challenges and not able to make those steps or take those steps towards those goals? Yeah,
I think the word goal is the pivotal term there, because again, the freedoms and the knowledge and the resources that a lot of the elite fitness professionals I know have to devote towards goals are often performance-led goals. So, things like the turf games or CrossFit and so on, people can go really in deep with focusing towards very specific performance-led goals. Whereas I think for the regular person on the street, it's about sort of more active longevity goals, I think, about general health, about wellness. It's about being able to live a healthy, vibrant, full, energetic life. And I think that is very much achievable by looking at almost kind of micro doses of how you live your life, as opposed to worrying too much about how big your deadlift is, or how many overhead reps you can do at however many kilograms, and if you can do a muscle up or not, and all this kind of stuff, which elite fitness professionals have the luxury to kind of work on that. And I think that's why sometimes when, particularly looking at social media and so on, if you're the regular guy, girl in the street looking at all these fitness professionals doing all these amazing things, it can seem a little bit daunting and unobtainable, but I think it's all a bit of a red herring. I think focusing on your day-to-day energy expenditure, your non-exercise specific energy expenditure, talk about NEAT and things like that. And then being able to just kind of move in ways that you enjoy, that have a community sense about them, whether that's joining people online or joining people at your local community centre to do a Zumba class. I don't care. It doesn't matter, as long as it gets you moving and it gets you feeling good. Same with your nutrition as well. You don't have to be, and certainly not the way I live. A lot of elite athletes measure out the macros, the calories throughout the day, or whatever it might be. I've got no interest in that whatsoever, and I don't think most people, as I say, in the street. I keep using that term. You might not live in the street. You might live out in the country in the field. I don't know, but the regular sort of non-fitness professional, in my opinion, it's not about becoming an automated human being and counting how many calories you're consuming every day, counting the macros and so on. You just want to eat decent food that makes you feel good. You want to get enough fiber and protein and carbohydrates and so on. So it's about kind of relaxing the rules and about just helping people to have a general day-to-day pattern that is health-inducing, that looks at active longevity, that helps to, maintain joint health and things like that, which I think is miles away from how many muscle ups you can do in a minute versus how big your deadlift can be. Does that make sense? The comparison with the two, the goal focus is a bit different. So you need to know your goal, your why, in order to move towards that, and with the right process, like we were discussing earlier, because it's all about the process.
Yeah, I think it does make sense.
Are you sure? I sometimes waffle and go off on one, Nick, but as long as that made some sense to you, hopefully it made some sense to people out there listening.
I certainly hope so. I think the key component that you talked about there is clarity. Clarity, and what comes with that is focus and knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that's the biggest problem as well, because we kind of get caught up. I don't know your view on this, but we get caught up in seeing other people doing some cool shit, and we suddenly want to do that, and then it's too difficult. So, and we don't understand the process of getting to that. And actually the goal isn't that important to us, and it doesn't fit into our long-term strategy of kind of being healthier and happier. So we lose interest, and then we flip-flop around on all sorts of different shiny objects, without any real clarity and focus. And exactly what you said, the way that, you know, I'm always telling people to do that is bring it back to your why, understand what you're doing it and why you're doing something, and why that's important to you, and how it's anchored on a daily basis. And falling out of that, exactly as you said, is the process.
Yeah, it's the small, often seemingly mundane day-to-day details that stack up and make the difference in the long run. And we can be wooed by all of these extreme gym feats that all these fitness professionals are doing. But honestly, that's a different space. That's their chapter. Focus on your chapter.
So what's
and your why?
Yeah, absolutely. So what does what's a day in the life of Lawrence Price in terms of, if we're thinking about how someone might structure their day to day to get the benefits, what does a day look like for you?
It's a bit random at the moment. I'll take you through two variations if you like. So as I say, I've managed, it's been a good 10 years to get to this point, but I managed to get to the point where I don't have to be in work early anymore. So I can actually spend the mornings at home with the kids, which is very important to me. Next week I've got 2 underwear shoots, which is a bit of a random one. Not every week is like that, I promise. But it means that I have to fight my internal urges somewhat, and actually kind of strip back a little bit, which is what I've been doing the last 2 weeks. So to do that, I mean, I get up early with the kids, give my wife a bit of a line, who's normally been up through the night, because we've got a 5-month-old as well as a 3-year-old. So I'll spend the first sort of hour or so downstairs with them, and I'll just be playing with them and trying to keep the TV at bay for as long as possible. Although my 3-year-old is currently addicted to Ben and Holly's Magic Kingdom, which is if she starts trashing the place, if I switch that on, it just preserves the furniture a little bit longer. But I'll spend an hour basically, from a personal point of view, just enjoying that start to the day. I think I used to, before I had kids, start that part of the day just quietly. I used to sit looking out the window, sipping my black coffee, again without any phones or TVs on. I used to try and collect my thoughts and just kind of visualize what I was going to do that day, how I was feeling, and just try and be in tune with myself. And I went through a stage of really being quite strict about not allowing myself to get into a reactive state mentally, and to try and live each day by my own experiences, as opposed to the experiences that are being thrust upon me through the news or through other people, whatever it might be. And that was almost this kind of like utopian, mindful start, way of starting the day. And then the last few years, reality struck home, obviously, in which actually that is a bit of a dream, and it's unrealistic and it's unsustainable. And there has to be one foot, yes, in that kind of personal mindfulness space, but one step firmly in reality as well. So obviously my mornings now are a little bit more chaotic with the kids and everything that goes on, and I'm happy with that. So I'll have my coffee, and then this morning I actually went for an hour walk up and down the hills in the area, because it's just a good technique for me to switch on. It's slightly raining, which I quite like. It's quite atmospheric. It's the trees are green, and you have all these kind of wet droplets of water. You walk to the top of the hill and you overlook the county of Hampshire, and it's kind of this green canopy with the gentle rain coming down. You've got horses standing in the fields, and I kind of look at the horses, I look at the trees, and I kind of figure out, what is my place in this universe? What is my role? And it's not, as we were saying earlier, to try and get the biggest, most shiny car, or to try and get, the biggest house, or whatever it might be. It's something more, it's far deeper and wholesome than that. So I find it's a lovely way of setting my mindset and setting my my sort of inner space. And then also from a fitness point of view, I find it quite a good way of leaning up purely for aesthetic space. And I say the only way I'm leaning up at the moment is because of this these underwear shoots next week. And then I'll come back and I'll have 4 scrambled eggs with some mint tea, which I'm sipping now. And then this is where I find that I'm in a good creative space for chatting to people like yourself right now, like we're doing the podcast, Nick, or if I have an article to write, doing that, or if I have something that I want to create, doing that. And then I have to say this is a day that I'm working at home, so I'm not off to London. I will then spend. I will then spend a couple. Nick's just gone off. He's disappeared. I think he's gone for a wee. But I'll just keep talking. Oh, he's back. That was a quick wee. And then I will try and get my training in. So for me, my biorhythms, like I tend to train better in the sort of mid to late morning, sort of 10 to midday, that sort of time. And again, this is on the day in which I can afford myself the luxury when I work from home, which is a Monday and a Friday. And then I should probably give you a bit of realism, because this is all the ideal day that I work towards. But the reality is, a lot of the time I'm sort of trying to do as much of that as possible, but I'm actually out the door on the train into London, and then just doing PT throughout the day, going to castings, going to meetings and whatever it might be, and then not eating enough food, not drinking enough water, drinking too much coffee, getting home tired and exhausted and hungry, which is what happens normally it used to be 5 days a week, but now luckily it's only Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when I get asked that question, I know what my ideal day looks like, and I have managed to achieve that to a certain degree enough over the years. Probably the 80-20 rule. But the reality is that you can't get too het up about that. You have to be able to have that mental agility to still be in a good place mentally when you have a bad start to the day for whatever reason. Still, like if the commute's a bit shit, or if you just have the wrong news flash on the TV or whatever it might be, I think true kind of mindful living, you're able to experience those and still hold your ground in terms of being true to yourself and your emotions and your true experience. So it's a little bit of the two. Control amongst the chaos, that's where I'm heading, whereas it used to just be control amongst tranquility. But yeah, that's
being a dad, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's real. It's a bit more realistic.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'm due, expecting very, very soon.
Oh man, this is So how many weeks do you know until
3?
Oh crikey! So you're right at the end of the line.
Do
you know if boy or girl? Do you know?
Haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
First baby, so we're not finding out. So we shall see. But okay, and with that that response then. So I just want to kind of dispel a few myths. I think a lot of guys out there that kind of might look at the cover of a magazine or something like that and think that there's an extreme life going on, where calories are counted, sleep is measured in seconds, and recovery and there's some sort of scientific lab attached to the side of these guys' houses that they live in. So I just I want you to just chat through kind of like what you're doing and not doing in terms of maintaining your fitness for something like a shoot. So are you training every day, and what's your nutrition look like?
So I think for me, like one of the important things for me, when the visual side of it, and as you say, like for me personally, as a goal, this is like 3rd or 4th down the pecking order after, my reason why I train. And the top of the reason is mental clarity, and I've got active longevity, and all, and sports performance or whatever it might be. And way down then is aesthetics, but because of my job and because of what I do, it is something that I have to pay attention to, obviously, because it helps me to earn an income. So I do have a process that I like to go through, and for me, one of the big factors to keeping body fat down has been my exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT as it's called. And I didn't even really know about that term until recently, but now I'm using it all the time because I'm like, oh, that's what I've been doing for a few years. So I made a few changes again about 6 years ago when I started to focus on my day-to-day, as we were saying earlier. And one of the things I did was I stopped using the moped to get to the gym in the morning. I started using the Boris bikes, as they were at the time, now the Santander. So, early doors, I would just start to cycle to work, and that would be, 20 minutes or something like that. I'll then always make sure that I'm kind of like, I'm always on my feet. Again, I'm very lucky in that I don't have a desk job. I'm always on my feet. Benefits of that are, I'm always expending calories because I'm always moving around, but it's not that great for sports performance. You can get to the end of the week and your legs, and you just feel a bit hammered and tired, and it's very hard then to go and do your squat PBs and deadlift PBs and so on. So what I try to do is maintain that NEAT, maintain that sort of non-exercise specific energy output throughout the day, and then just try and tee it up with maybe just 3. If I've got a big shoot the following week, I will try and get 5 in, but 3 training sessions that are really purposeful and meaningful, in which I just keep it quite simple and focus on big compound lifts. I was kind of doing some deadlifts yesterday and so on, some cleans, and just really focus on trying to get my bigger structures moving and challenge more muscle groups. And again, it doesn't have to be kind of crazy stuff. It doesn't have to be too elaborate. It doesn't have to be overly creative. Again, other red herrings we see on Instagram are that in this kind of scurry to create original content, more and more original stuff is being putting out there, which is very creative and quite random a lot of the time. Just take it back to basics and focus on your compound strength, your chest press, your upper body press, your upper body pull, and then your deadlift, your squat, whatever it might be. And I just keep it quite simple. Then with regards to nutrition, another big change I made 6 years ago when I started just upping my NEAT game was I got an Able and Cold Veg box delivered every week because I didn't think I was having enough fiber. And I was doing, throughout my 20s, I was doing what a lot of guys do, and they just focus overly on their protein consumption. So I was probably eating way too much protein, not enough fiber. So I eat a shed load of vegetables. For me, fibrous vegetables, for me, that does a huge difference in terms of my well-being. And I've been told by experts that's linked to my gut health, where a lot of serotonin is created as well in your gut. So a lot of good quality fiber content, lots of water, and a big NEAT game every day, and then 3 purposeful sessions where I just focus on my compound lifts, and that tends to be a good space. And I think that's also, I think it's kind of realistic. If you've got an office job, I know it sounds so boring and dull, but take the stairs instead of the lift. As often as you can, it stacks up. When you sit down to have your lunch, just make good, nourishing choices 80% of the time. And if you can, try and get into the gym, 2 or 3 times a week and lift some weight. Get challenge your strength a little bit, and that's about it, Nick.
I like it.
Yeah,
well,
back to basics.
I think that is the key. Keep it simple, something that you can achieve on a regular basis, and therefore be consistent. And that makes perfect sense what you said. And you ask these questions and you're kind of preempting the answers a little bit, but perfectly, and a lot of wisdom in what you're saying there as well. And the neat thing as well is relatively new. My wife started chatting about it relatively recently, and I was like, "What the hell is she talking about? I don't understand what neat is." But,
yeah.
but
just being active.
Yeah, it's living what I'd consider a healthy life with lots of movement in it. And one of the useful psychological breakthroughs that I think kind of resonates with lots of the guys I speak to is, if you're sat, say, in the afternoon at your desk and you feel a little bit lethargic because you've maybe had too many carbs for lunch or whatever, and you feel, you kind of things, you just feel too lethargic, you haven't got any energy. It sounds counterintuitive, but getting up and moving your body is going to give you the energy. And that's all part of being healthy. And I think people completely forget that we're adaptation machines. And if you just keep sitting down and eating, then you're going to adapt to that lifestyle, and it's going to be harder and harder for your body to actually function at a cellular level. So, doing these things that we're talking about actually is going to give you the energy and make you feel better. And I think a lot of people don't want to kind of make that draw that conclusion in their mind. They want to draw the conclusion that being fit and healthy is quite hard and quite challenging, and actually not for them.
Yeah. No, I think you've hit on a number of really key points there, and this whole thing of adaptation occurring through whatever stimulus or non-stimulus we put upon the body is huge, and combining that with consistency over time. I think as long as you have a good understanding of that, and a good understanding that if the trappings of modern day life, of technology, of the 9 to 5, of desk life, and I know that the term "sitting is the new smoking" has been coined because of the level of sort of negative impact it has on your health and so on. So you just take all these things into consideration and know that movement, like you said, is the antidote to modern living. So if you do put yourself in that category of having the desk job and so on, instead of seeing exercise as a negative kind of almost frustrating side issue, I think you should bring it into your life and prioritize it as very much, as I say, the antidote to modern living and all the issues that are associated with sedentary life.
Yeah, absolutely. It can't be. I think that message is just can't be said enough, really. For sure. Okay.
Sorry, just that stepping back from yourself and trying to self-assess your own mindset as well, and just so I think the term self-management is quite an important one, and you have to try and maybe step back from yourself emotionally, or speak to someone professionally and try and figure out whether you have a growth mindset or not when it comes to fitness or training, whatever it might be. And we can hijack our own personal progress quite easily simply by not giving ourselves enough of a growth mindset in the areas that would benefit us. And I think, that whole chicken and egg scenario for me, and I was speaking to someone on my podcast about this recently, but I think the chicken and egg situation between body and mind, I think, it all comes from the mind first, and just developing the right kind of growth mindset first can lead on to these wonderful, wonderful achievements in life. And getting up and moving a little bit more is one of those hugely, hugely profound decisions that you'll ever make.
I agree, absolutely, and it does all start with mindset, and it so much so, things become cliches, don't they?
I know. I'm just thinking then, I don't want to sound like we're, like a lot of other fitness podcasts do when they have this conversation, but it is just so key that the power that we all have within ourselves to action out intent. So many of us have the intent to be a bit fitter, to be a bit more sort of energetic, to have a bit more purpose about them every day. But it's within you. It's within every single one of us. And for anyone that we look up to who we think is successful has had to hone in on their own mind in order to get the best out of themselves. So it's completely achievable, and it's within all of us.
And what's your view of put yourself at the center of your own self-care, as it were? Because I think, the challenge I get is people say, oh, I'm too busy, I've got to do stuff with the kids, I've got to go work's really important because I've got to do X, Y, and Z, and their pushback is that they don't have time. I'm just interested in how your view of kind of putting yourself and your own self-care as a priority. How does that fit in?
Yeah, it's that old adage of, and it is a paradox, because the busier you are, the more you need it, when it comes to taking time out. There's that, whether that be for training or whether that be for your mental health as much as your physical health. But there's that saying that if you're busy, you should take 20 minutes of each of your day to sit in nature. But if you're too busy for that, you should take an hour to sit in nature. The whole point being is that the more you stack up the things in life which mean that you're busy, you're stacking up more reasons, potentially, depending on the situation, that could lead you to being less healthy physically or mentally, whatever it might be. So if you're busy, you need to, more than anyone else, have an eye on your own health, and to manage that and to have that accountability, and to have that ownership over your own mental and physical health is so important, because I find it quite useful that knowing that although I've got wonderful friends and family around me that support me, when I was born, the umbilical cord was cut. You're on your own. You've got to sort, to a certain degree, your own priorities out, because sometimes we kind of, it's quite easy for us to sort of develop, instead of that kind of growth mindset, it's easy for us to develop almost a sort of victim mindset, where we're waiting for someone to come and save us. But that person is us. That person, as I said earlier, is inside of us, and we have to be accountable for our own choices. I know it sounds like a little bit of tough love, but I know that I need that personally, which is why I'm sharing it with you.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to slip into that victim mindset, and I think we're all guilty of it at times in our lives. But it's so important, like you said, is to step back and reflect on a regular basis. How is this moving forward? How am I not? Living with that growth mindset, as you referenced?
Yeah.
How am I being too fixed, too rigid in my thoughts? How am I calcifying in my brain and avoiding what I should be doing to live a more fulfilled life, really, and be healthier and happier? And sometimes sometimes you get bogged down in the detail of life, and you forget to take that step back and do the reflective work that's required.
100%. And as I said, until the age of 28, 29, I never really did it. And I remember I sit here now and I look back on certain thoughts or certain decisions I was making in life before that. And looking for the excuses not to do something. Look, if something was a challenge, I was like, well, shy away from that, as opposed to seeing it as something that would give me that personal development. And I just think that reading books, I know, again, I don't want to sound like all the old cliches, but I listened to some great podcasts. I read so many great books, and a lot of them were about self-management, about stepping back from yourself emotionally and looking at yourself, trying to, writing down on paper your attributes, the things that you're good at, writing down on paper the areas that you want to improve upon. And then slowly kind of taking a bit of a leap of faith and starting to action those out and to develop that growth mindset. It all comes back to what we said at the start of the podcast, of those kind of small day-to-day details and the process leading to bigger and better things. And I believe that so deeply now, more than ever.
Absolutely. Cool. Moving forward quickly. What's next for Lawrence Price? What's next for the brand, the person?
Very good question. I wish I could tell you. I wish I had a profound answer for that. I honestly don't know. I obviously have my kind of big ticket goals that we talked about earlier, which are kind of there in the background. But I really am just focusing on my kind of day-to-day details at the moment. And I feel like the last 4 or 5 months since we had our second child, I took a little bit of step back away from the hustle in life. And I spent a lot of time at home, and I spent a lot of time. I was quite lucky that I could be around home. And then I had jobs that I would go to and then come back, as opposed to being away from my home a lot. But now this next quarter, the final quarter of the year, is where I sort of start the next chapter, really. And I'm back both feet into the hustle and getting stuck into my training and just seeing what the next chapter has in store, because I believe so much in this whole act of trusting the process and of focusing on just living a good life on those day-to-day details. I'm really excited about what happens next, because I haven't got a clue what it is. Who knows,
awesome.
Nick?
Who knows?
That's the magic of living like this, you see.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm on a journey of discovery as well, in terms of doing more freelance stuff, starting my own business over the last sort of 12-18 months. It's been a really interesting process, and I think you have to have a very high degree of risk tolerance and trust in the process. That's part of it. Yeah,
I think this word serendipity and having this serendipitous approach to life is something I quite enjoy at the moment, because a lot of the amazing things that have happened to me in life have literally been things that have popped up rather than sit down and really plan things out and try and crowbar out this pathway. Some of the most amazing things that have happened both professionally and personally have just come out of the blue from nowhere. So I've learned to trust the universe and just to give out that good energy, and it returns some amazing things back. So yeah.
Well, I think that's a great comment, and I think if you, like you say, if you try and my experience is, if you try and sort of, like you say, crowbar your perfect career, life, family structure, and try and be very scripted around that, then you've got to really question where that script's come from. And I think in a lot of cases, that's through conditioning. So, and if you follow that kind of logic through, then it's perhaps not your innate desire. because it's come from a series of conditions, be it your parents, or lifestyle, culture, your communities you've been part of up until this point. So, Dr. Joe Dispenza would say you're living in the past, and you're living from certainty, which will stop you moving into a beautiful existence, really, because you're trying to be way too prescriptive from a place where you've not had that much control over, because it's all been kind of step by step, and kind of through that process.
I love that, and I completely agree. And I think it leads you into that search for external validation as opposed to that internal validation. And it's one of the hardest things in the world, where we've got, as you say, all these shiny objects around us, to understand what our true self wants and what our true self should be doing. But if we can get in tune with that inner, that true self, that deeper consciousness, then that's where the magic happens.
Yes.
In my humble opinion.
Lawrence, I've got two questions to finish off with.
Okay.
One I'm going to phrase slightly differently. So I ask all my guests, what does health mean to them? And I'm going to ask you that question, but I know recently you put a really profound post out on social media around what fitness means to you. And I think those terms are kind of interchangeable from your perspective, and maybe you can kind of boil down what health means to you.
Yeah, I think it's so many things, and I think that was the post where I was talking about physical and mental health as well. I think, is that the same one? Yeah, absolutely. I think health really is a state of mind in which you feel fulfilled with who you are and what you do and how you act towards others. And whatever gets you to that state of mind, whether it be physical exercise, whether it be mindfulness practices, whether it be the way you interact with the relationships that you have, for me, that's health, and that's being healthy. To get into that headspace, you have to give a lot as well, in terms of, you have to give a lot of love. You have to be curious to the relationships around you. It's not a take kind of mindset. But I think the point I was getting to that in that post, because I think it was National Fitness Day, and I was asked to comment on what fitness is and what health is to me. And for me nowadays, it's just as much about that mental state of mind, that mental health, as much as the physical health as well. And I know that for me to be in a good place and to be in a healthy place, as you say, mentally, I have to move. I have to do all the things that we've talked about. We're humans, we're designed to move. I have to have that antidote to modern living, but I also have to really sort of sit down and cherish and enjoy the relationships that I have in life. And I'm very lucky to have some wonderful friends and some wonderful family around me, and that makes me feel extremely healthy. More and from a more kind of practical physical point of view, in terms of training, for me now, health, and as my family grows old around me and so on, parents and the rest of it, I do have a firm eye on the future as well, and that active longevity being a key part of how I want to be anyway, and it's healthy and active and fit in many decades to come. So hopefully, God willing, I can see my kids grow up and enjoy it as well.
Excellent answer, or really, really impressive answer. And yeah, it draws on everything we've spoken about through the podcast. So, thank you for that response. The other kind of point that I was gonna ask you is slipped my mind for some reason. But where can people find out more about you, Lawrence, and where can they interact with you and what's coming up?
I'm always thinking I should be like, so I think my Instagram handle is for Fit's Sake, which is spelled FAFITSAKE, and I think that I think there's got links from there to my podcast, which is called Walk with Lawrence, and it's very new. I'm not a pro like you, Nick. This is all brand new to me, this whole podcasting world. But again, I think podcast is such a valuable tool, and it's such a lovely way to share deeper information, deeper content that you don't always get to do on platforms like Instagram or whatever. So I do have a website, but actually I've been looking at a few other people recently and realizing I need a big overhaul. So just go to my Instagram, and
Yeah.
that should suffice. But yeah.
Yeah, well, you hopefully haven't been looking at my website because it's woefully kind of lacking. But yeah, no, I'm sure people will. I'm sure they'll interact with you. But I just want to acknowledge you for all the amazing work you're doing, and the thoughtful answers that you've given in the podcast as well. Just highlight the amount of thought you're putting into the process that you're embarking on, and it's not you're not being reactionary. You're being quite mindful about how you approach health and fitness.
Trying to be, but it really is the journey, and I think I'm just getting to know myself better than I used to, and I think that's really helpful. Is really looking, as I said earlier, inwardly and trying to connect with that deeper self and not seek that external validation. That's led to a lot more happiness and a lot more clarity of thought for me. So I recommend it.
Awesome, Lawrence. Let's leave it there. Thank you very much, brother, and we will speak again soon.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. Cheers, buddy.
There we go, another episode in the bag. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in and listening all the way to the end. I truly appreciate that. And the support that you guys have shown me, whether that be social media or the messages you've pinged me personally, or any other aspects that you've kind of fed back to me. It's always really great to hear from you. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. Loz is a awesome guy, really lovely bloke, and quite funny as well, quite humorous, and hopefully you can tell we get on quite well together. That episode kind of really brought home to me kind of the holistic approach that I think we all need to take when it comes to our own health and wellness and fitness, and trying to silo things in, or even people into little silos and little groups, and trying to be kind of secular about it just doesn't work. And I think that's really important to remember when we're kind of looking at these quote unquote influencers on social media or whatever it might be. There's a whole bigger picture going on with that individual, and also with your own health. There's a bigger picture, and you've got to include all aspects, whether that be relationships, nutrition, what you're doing in terms of your movement, and we're always going to be challenging ourselves as well. So that's kind of how I wanted to leave this episode with you thinking about those different components. Guys, thank you very much. If you want to hear more from Lars, please engage with him on social media. Instagram's probably the best place. That's where he is all the time. The guy is incessant with how much he's posting. It's incredible. His work rate is truly aspirational, certainly from my perspective. I'm always lacking in that department when it comes to posting stuff up. But please interact with Loz. Let him know how you feel. If you can review us on iTunes, I'll be truly grateful. Really trying to get my numbers up so we get more people in. So if you can chuck a review on iTunes, I'll be truly grateful. And any feedback, people you want to get on the podcast, things you want us to talk about, questions you've got, fitness, health, whatever it might be, get them back in. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Knock, and we will be back very, very soon with another episode, another incredible guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.